Hello, I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
And I'm Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And we're the insiders. And this week we're going to be talking about the U.S. Senate race on the Democratic side. So Chuck, there's been some movement in this race. Where do you think it's headed?
Well, there clearly are two front runners, but the person who I think even Scott talked about, Sarah Godlewski earlier, Sarah Godlewski, who is one of the three who has the money probably to run the race, she actually fell behind Thomas Nelson. So Tom Nelson is ahead of Sarah Godlewski in the Marquette poll, but the two who are leading the pack are Mandela Barnes and Alex Lasry. And Alex Lasry has been spending some money to get his name recognition up and to also communicate. And it seems that he has a pretty good message. And I've been hearing about this from people in northern Wisconsin as well. So what's happening now is you have two people who have either a really strong lead or a strong base and money, Mandela Barnes and Alex Lasry. And then you have two other people. And right now it's looking like Sarah Godlewski is, unless she can turn it around, she is really losing ground. So you'd say there are two front runners in Mandela Barnes and Alex Lasry, but then you see Thomas Nelson still being there. And at some point, the question is whether he can make a run. He's obviously making some improvements and able to get ahead of the other person who most people, I think, would have said should have been one of the top three people that's running. So it's an interesting dynamic. I think there's a lot of water yet to go under the bridge. And I do not think this race is over at all. And I'm surprised, frankly, that the one woman in the race, Sarah Godlewski, seems to be the one person that is falling behind far enough that she may not have any impact on the race. And it's two front runners with a dark horse candidate in Tom Nelson. And I think that it's those three right now looks like moving forward.
I agree with you, Chuck. Mandela Barnes is the front runner. Alex Lasry is in a solid second. And Sarah Godlewski is in danger of dropping off the table here. This is a person whose campaign is seriously underperformed all the way along. Now, she does have the capacity to try to right the ship because she's personally wealthy, so she can make that happen. But I would argue that this race is going to change dramatically when the first shot is fired, because I think everybody knows that Mandela Barnes is an opposition researcher's dream, and that someone is going to decide that they're going to pick up votes by taking them away from Mandela Barnes, and an attack will be launched on him. And then the question is, where do the votes go? Do they go to the person who was making the attack, or do they go to somebody on the sidelines who wasn't making the attack, somebody with clean hands? And that may be the reason that an outside group will be the ones making the attack, so that none of the candidates have any fingerprints on it. But I think it is well understood on the Democratic side that of the candidates they have in this race, Mandela Barnes is the weakest candidate in the general election, and others in that race are not going to let him just stay as the front runner. The attacks will begin, I think, relatively soon, and the race will begin to shake up.
I think that the one difference is that the Republicans seem more willing to take off the gloves and really fight these issues. Democrats tend to not want to do it. I think that more likely of the scenarios you posted there, Scott, would be that a third party might get out there and do something, because I think that most Democrats, especially in like a three-way race, especially, learned the lesson from the Feingold race early on, where Chakota and Moody went after each other, and Russ Feingold ran through the open hole and scored a touchdown and won the Democratic primary and went on to be the U.S. Senator for Wisconsin. I think that it'll be interesting to see whether Democrats are willing to take on those issues. But I think that if they don't, I think that it is something that Republicans will use in the general election and cause some issues. I think that now we're talking about the Democratic primary here. I think we can't talk about this without talking about the general election. Ron Johnson is at a low point in his historical, the historical rankings that he has in the state of Wisconsin. He continues to say things, which I'm amazed that his campaign people can't get him to stop. He continues to say controversial things which hurt him. I think in the general election, he takes the advantage of a very strong Republican year, at least at this point. But I wonder if with Ron Johnson, if it's just going to be too much. His own personal unpopularity might actually bring him down. But I do think that the Democratic candidate in the general will make a difference. And who that is and how they match up certainly is something that's yet to be determined. I think there is a lot yet to happen in this race, but it is interesting to watch. And for people on the inside, it is particularly interesting to watch what Scott's saying. And will there be some shots fired across the bow at Mandela Barnes and at any of the candidates? They all have negatives, but I think that there's a lot more to be done before we determine the primary. And the general, I think the general is still very much up in the air, even across the country. We have a really dynamic situation. A lot of changes can happen with what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on with the economy and what will happen with the U.S. Supreme Court on the Roe versus Wade decision, and at least the Mississippi version of that. I think there's a lot of dynamics that could change, that could make this race very different, and much of that is beyond the candidate's control.
Well, that probably means we'll be talking about it again and again over the course of the rest of this year.
See you next time.
See you soon.